In modern stories, Princess Gaoyang is a princess who broke every rule for love. She is portrayed as a rebellious princess defined by a tragic and forbidden affair with the monk, Biànjī, and closely tied to the legendary Wu Zetian's rise to power. In the C-drama, the Empress of China, Princess Gaoyang is shown as being close to Wu Zetian, bonded by a mutual disdain for the constraint of the Tang Dynasty court. This image is echoed in a game, Road to Empress, where Princess Gaoyang is the rule-breaking friend who visits you in the servant quarter to share dangerous secrets. But according to historical records, there is no evidence of any relationship between Princess Gaoyang and Wu Zetian at all. For most of Princess Gaoyang's life, she was a high-ranking and favored princess, while Wu Zetian was just a cairen, the lowest-ranked consort of the Tang Dynasty Imperial harem. By the time Wu Zetian finally started to move up the ranks, Princess Gaoyang was already in a lot of trouble with the court. And Princess Gaoyang died 2 years before Wu Zetian became empress, while Wu Zetian was still desperately fighting for her own survival in the inner court. The timing just doesn't add up. There was simply no reason for their path to cross. But what about her affair? Was that real? Well, that depends on which historical record you ask. So, what is the real story of Princess Gaoyang? Hey everyone, and welcome back to Tea with Amy. Today, let's look at the real recorded history of Princess Gaoyang, a woman who supposedly defied the rules of the Tang Dynasty court and paid the price for her forbidden love. Princess Gaoyang was born into the Imperial Li family during the height of her father's reign, as the 17th daughter of Emperor Taizong. Her exact date of birth is not recorded, but some historians estimate her birth year to be around 627 CE. Like many women of the Li family, her personal birth name was not recorded in the official histories. Unlike the princesses that we covered in previous videos, she was not born directly to Empress Jiangsun and was instead born to an unknown consort. In Chinese culture, children born to the primary wife, in this case the empress, were generally considered to be of higher status, better treated, and more likely to receive inheritance. They were known as Di. Children born to the other concubines were known as Shu. In a previous video about Empress Jiangsun, we talked about how she helped to raise imperial daughters born to consorts that were ill or passed away early. We don't know for sure, but maybe Princess Gaoyang was one of those taken care of by the empress. However, while Princess Gaoyang was a Shu daughter, she was favored by the emperor and treated with a level of leniency that rivaled and sometimes surpassed the Di daughters. It is not exactly clear why she was so favored, but the records do suggest that she grew up in a world where the word no was rarely heard, and that she became arrogant and spoiled. Around 641 CE, Emperor Taizong betrothed the princess to Fang Yi'ai, the son of the powerful chancellor Fang Xuanling. Fang Xuanling served as chancellor for over 20 years and was one of the main people responsible for running the Tang Dynasty government. He was considered by many to be the strategist of the empire and was extremely trusted by the emperor. By betrothing the princess to the powerful and respected Fang family, the emperor was making sure this favored daughter would be taken care of by someone that he trusted. At the same time, he was also reinforcing his trust in Fang Xuanling and further strengthening the bond between their two families. It was around this time that the princess was granted her official title of Gaoyang, and she was granted a significant amount of wealth, with some records claiming that she was granted a revenue grant from 1,000 households. For context, the standard for most princesses was closer to around 300 households, and this favor was even passed on to her husband. According to the old Book of Tang, because the princess was favored by Emperor Taizong, Fang Yi'ai received special grace and treatment, and his ritual status was vastly different from other imperial sons-in-law. This was supposed to be a perfect marriage, but it wasn't. While arranged marriages of these kinds generally don't take into consideration feelings of affection or love, it still became a problem for Princess Gaoyang. Maybe they didn't have any shared interests, or maybe their personalities clashed. We don't know exactly why, but records suggest that their marriage was not a happy one. In addition, Princess Gaoyang found herself constantly at odds with the rigid expectations of her new mother-in-law, Lady Lu. Historical records describe Lady Lu as strict and jealous, with a famous legend telling how she threatened to take poison if the emperor was to grant her husband a new concubine. Princess Gaoyang was used to being in charge. She refused to play the role of a submissive daughter-in-law and was constantly at odds with Lady Lu and the Fang family, creating a toxic domestic environment. However, despite these conflicts, Princess Gaoyang had at least 2 sons with her husband, Fang Jie and Fang Shen. But that was just fulfilling her duty. She still did not want to settle for a husband whom she was not interested in. If she could not find happiness with her marriage to Fang Yi'ai, she would find it elsewhere. Normally, freedom was a rare luxury for imperial women. They were constantly under supervision and governed by strict rules of etiquette. But Princess Gaoyang was not your typical imperial woman. Around 645 CE, Princess Gaoyang was out with her husband, Fang Yi'ai. They were on a hunting trip around one of her estates, and they came across a quiet, secluded Buddhist temple. It was there that she met a young monk named Biànjī. Biànjī was not just an ordinary monk. He was a brilliant scholar and one of the most prestigious disciples of the renowned monk Xuanzang. And a quick side note, Xuanzang was the real-life inspiration for Tang Sanzang from the legendary story Journey to the West. As one of Xuanzang's primary disciples, Biànjī was responsible for translating Sanskrit texts that Xuanzang brought back from India, and helped author Xuanzang's great Tang records on the western regions. Biànjī was scholarly and spiritual, quite different from the princess's husband, Fang Yi'ai. The new Book of Tang records Princess Gaoyang meeting Biànjī and how their relationship quickly escalated. She saw Biànjī and was filled with joy. She moved into his place and committed adultery with him. These same records also claim that the princess made a deal with her husband. The princess gave 2 women to Fang Yi'ai to serve him, and he did not dare to speak of it. This is further reinforced by another passage. The princess brought 2 beautiful women to Fang Yi'ai, making them sleep together, forcing him to submit, and to keep the affair hidden. This was Princess Gaoyang's first real act of rebellion, by establishing a new relationship on her own terms. The affair continued in secret for several years, during which the princess brought Biànjī numerous gifts from the imperial palace, ranging from silks to precious artifacts. She was living the way she wanted. She had found a way to be happy within a system that rarely allowed for it. But this was obviously against the rules, and it was a lot more serious than just an issue of adultery. In the Tang Dynasty, an imperial princess was not just a person. She was a representative of the imperial family and the emperor. Her body and her conduct were imperial property, making this affair a political statement that she was above the law of the empire. In 648 CE, Princess Gaoyang's father-in-law, the chancellor Fang Xuanling, passed away, and her conflict with the Fang family finally reached its peak. Now about who should control the family and its fortune. Under Tang Dynasty law, the eldest son, Fang Yizhi, was the rightful heir to his father's prestigious title and estate. But the princess was accustomed to receiving different treatment and felt that her husband and herself deserved that inheritance instead. She openly fought with Fang Yizhi over this. The conflict became so toxic that Emperor Taizong personally stepped in to mediate, siding with Fang Yizhi and ordering Princess Gaoyang to back down. And then everything started to fall apart from there. Later that year, a thief was caught, and the authorities found a golden-mounted jade pillow in his possession. This was a special artifact that was supposed to only belong to members of the imperial family. So finding this artifact in the thief's possession was extremely alarming. When the thief was interrogated, he confessed that he had stolen it from a monk. Further investigation quickly revealed the jade pillow as a gift from Princess Gaoyang, and her affair was discovered. Princess Gaoyang had crossed the line that even Emperor Taizong could not overlook. Emperor Taizong's reaction to the affair was swift and violent. He did not protect his daughter this time. Instead, he ordered a brutal purge of everyone involved in the affair. According to the new Book of Tang, Emperor Taizong was furious. He ordered that Biànjī be cut in half at the waist, and he executed more than 10 palace maids and attendants who had served the princess. In the Tang Dynasty's legal system, execution by cutting in half at the waist was reserved for crimes that threatened the fundamental order of the empire. It wasn't just a death sentence. It was a brutal punishment that was designed to be a shocking public deterrent. The execution of Biànjī was a complete shock to Princess Gaoyang. She had expected her father to indulge her again, just as he had before. But the emperor wanted to use this punishment as a warning, in an attempt to correct her behavior. Unfortunately, it had completely opposite effect. Instead of remorse, Princess Gaoyang felt a cold, burning resentment. Her father was no longer her protector and was instead a tyrant. She began to hate everything about the world around her. And then, just a few months later, in July of 649 CE, Emperor Taizong passed away. When the imperial court and the imperial family gathered to mourn the late emperor, Princess Gaoyang refused to display filial piety. According to the new Book of Tang, when Emperor Taizong died, Princess Gaoyang showed no expression of grief. To violate filial piety was considered to be an abominable offense. By refusing to properly mourn, Princess Gaoyang alienated herself from the rest of the imperial Li family. After Emperor Taizong passed away, Li Zhi ascended the throne as Emperor Gaozong. Emperor Gaozong was considered to be weak and soft by many of the people around him, including Princess Gaoyang. She saw this weakness as an opportunity. It is said that she began to dive deeper into the world of the occult, surrounding herself with figures who existed on the fringes of Tang Dynasty society. She sought out shamans, sorcerers, and monks who claimed to have power over the spirit world. According to the new Book of Tang, she consorted with the monk Zhixu, who could divine fortunes, the monk Huihong, who could see ghosts, and the Taoist priest Li Hua, who was skilled in medicine, all of whom secretly entered the princess's residence. It was believed that Princess Gaoyang was looking for ways to curse the imperial family and her enemies, or even predict the downfall of her brother, Emperor Gaozong. She began to coordinate with other dissatisfied members of the imperial family and high-ranking officials, including her husband, Fang Yi'ai. Together, they began to plot the beginning of a new world order, one where Emperor Gaozong was removed, and someone they could control was placed on the throne. This was no longer about being spoiled or heartbroken. This was now about treason. The indulged princess, who had once enjoyed every privilege of the empire, was now preparing to burn it all down. The spark that finally lit the fire didn't come from politics, but from the unresolved inheritance feud we saw back in 648 CE. Despite her political plotting, Princess Gaoyang remained obsessed with seizing the Fang family's primary inheritance. In 653 CE, she sent a formal accusation to her brother, Emperor Gaozong, claiming that her brother-in-law, Fang Yizhi, had been insolent and had made sexual advances toward her. This was almost certainly a false accusation, but it still put Fang Yizhi in a dangerous position. His life and his family's honor were on the line. In order to defend himself, he decided to go all out. He went directly to the emperor and confessed everything he knew about Princess Gaoyang's recent plots, the occult practices, the secret meetings, and the talks of revolution. Their conflict immediately escalated from a private family matter into an issue of empire security. Needless to say, Emperor Gaozong became extremely alarmed. He involved the regent,长孙Wuji, to investigate Fang Yizhi's claims, and what was uncovered was shocking.长孙Wuji discovered that Princess Gaoyang and her husband had been conspiring with members of the Imperial Li family, as well as high-ranking officials, including Prince Li Yuanjing and the powerful general Xuan Wanche. Li Yuanjing was the sixth son of the Tang Dynasty's founding emperor Gaozu, making him the uncle of the current emperor Gaozong. He was a senior, respected member of the imperial family, and his supporters felt that he would be a much stronger and mature emperor. Legends claim that he once dreamt that he was holding the sun and the moon, a classic omen used to justify his claim to the throne. Xuan Wanche was a hero of the early Tang Dynasty, having led many successful campaigns to expand the empire's territory. He was also an imperial son-in-law, married to Princess Danyang. But despite his service and honors, he felt underappreciated by the new emperor Gaozong and the regent长孙Wuji. He famously remarked, "If there is a change in the throne, I will support Li Yuanjing." Through his investigations,长孙Wuji found out their entire plan to overthrow Emperor Gaozong and replace him with Li Yuanjing. According to the new Book of Tang, Princess Gaoyang sent the eunuch Chen Xuanyun to spy on the palace and to observe the constellations to predict their fortune. And she conspired with Fang Yi'ai to support Li Yuanjing as the new emperor. This discovery created the perfect opportunity for长孙Wuji to purge all political enemies, even if they were not actually related to this plot of rebellion. One notable victim was the brilliant and popular prince Li Ke, who was the third son of the late emperor Taizong. There is no direct evidence suggesting that Li Ke was involved in any way, but长孙Wuji had become wary of his growing popularity. And so, he was unfortunately framed as a conspirator and forced to take his own life. Before he died, some legends claim that he cursed长孙Wuji, saying that the长孙family would eventually meet the same bloody ending for framing an innocent man. Ironically, this curse would become a reality many years later at the hands of Wu Zetian. The end also came quickly for the actual people involved in the treasonous plot. Fang Yi'ai and Xuan Wanche were executed by beheading. The prince, Li Yuanjing, was forced to take his own life, and Princess Gaoyang, once a beloved princess of the empire, was granted the mercy to depart by her own hand. The death of Princess Gaoyang also marked the end of the Fang family. Her sons, who were still children, were stripped of their status and exiled. Even Fang Yizhi wasn't able to escape punishment and was stripped of his titles and demoted to a commoner. But he was allowed to live as a reward for his role in uncovering the rebellion. The prestigious name of Fang Xuanling and the Fang family were now forever tainted by the mark of treason. But even in death, Princess Gaoyang could not be forgotten. Years later, her status was partially restored, and she was posthumously titled Princess Hepu, in an attempt to separate her from the tainted name of Princess Gaoyang. However, even this new title could not restore her reputation. But wait, was this really her story? When we look back at the life of Princess Gaoyang, we're left with a woman defined by scandal, treason, and blood. But as we dig deeper into the records, we will find there are discrepancies about her life, even amongst the official historical records. The primary source of Princess Gaoyang's infamy is in the new Book of Tang, which is compiled during the Song Dynasty, nearly 400 years after she lived. It is here that we find the vivid details of the jade pillow, the waist chopping of Biànjī, and the princess's scandalous behaviors. However, when we look at the old Book of Tang, which was written much closer to the actual events, the story of the affair with Biànjī is completely missing. Some modern historians suggest that Princess Gaoyang may have been the victim of a massive smear campaign. The historians of the Song Dynasty, like Ouyang Shou and Sima Guang, were often critical of Buddhism. By linking a rebellious princess to a high-ranking monk, they could create a moral parable that attacked both the independence of imperial women and the influence of the Buddhist religion. First of all, even her basic identity is a subject of debate. While the new Book of Tang lists her as Emperor Taizong's 17th daughter, another official record, the complete collection of Tang Dynasty literature, contains an imperial edict for Princess Gaoyang that identifies her as the 20th daughter. This may seem like a minor clerical error, but it hints at a larger problem. Princess titles were often reused. This is the edict we talked about earlier that claimed she was granted 1,000 households to collect taxes from, which was a massive fortune that was unheard of in the early Tang Dynasty. Some historians argue that this record was simply misfiled and actually refers to a later princess. If that's true, then the image of Princess Gaoyang as an exceptionally wealthy and spoiled favorite of Emperor Taizong might be based on a case of mistaken identity. The most glaring discrepancy is that the old Book of Tang records Princess Gaoyang's fighting with her brother-in-law and her involvement in the plot of treason, but it says absolutely nothing about the affair. If a famous monk had been brutally executed for adultery with a princess, it would have been a massive state scandal. Why would this record ignore it while detailing her other bad behaviors? And then let's look at how the Tang Dynasty actually punished other scandalous affairs of the imperial family. In many cases, a princess involved in an affair would be forced to divorce in order to save face. Other princesses were even imprisoned or had their titles stripped. But for Princess Gaoyang, the records show none of this. She didn't get a divorce, she wasn't secluded, and she didn't lose her status. She effectively faced no legal consequences. This suggests she was still a member of the imperial family in good standing, which should be impossible for a known adulteress who had caused a massive public execution. Then there is the claim that she showed no sorrow at Emperor Taizong's funeral. However, as mentioned before, the violation of filial piety was an abominable offense in the Tang Dynasty. If a princess was openly showing resentment for her father during his imperial funeral, it would have been a serious scandal with a formal reprimand. And yet, there is no record of anyone calling her out at the time. It seems like everyone just let it happen. Finally, let's look deeper at the Fang family. While Fang Yiyai was a second son and fighting with his older brother over the family inheritance is a tale as old as time, let's not forget that the Fang family was a prestigious noble family. This meant that there are far more than just two players fighting over money and status. The Fang family wasn't just Fang Yiyai and his brother. They would have been surrounded by powerful relatives. Many also married to other imperial princes or princesses. While not clearly represented in the official historical records, it seems likely that there was a much greater conflict here over the Fang family inheritance. Some modern historians now suggest that this may have been the real conflict that led to Princess Gaoyang's downfall. Unfortunately, we will never know the truth of what happened, and we're left with only suspicious discrepancies in the historical records. Whether the affair with Biànjī was a real secret or a later fabrication by Song Dynasty historians, the result was the same. In 653 CE, Princess Gaoyang was the perfect person to blame for the discovered plot of rebellion. Her existing reputation for conflict made it easy to paint her as the ultimate villain, justifying a purge that wiped out some of the most powerful people in the empire. The historical Princess Gaoyang was not a supporting character in someone else's rise to power. She was an indulged and arrogant princess who would become the architect of her own destruction. So why is it that modern stories chose to portray her as a tragic rebel and a friend of Wu Zetian? Maybe it's because her life is the perfect canvas for a modern narrative about rebellion against tradition. We want to believe in a Princess Gaoyang who chose love over status and sisterhood over the cold politics of the court. By linking her to Wu Zetian, modern writers could create a story of shared female empowerment, turning a messy family feud into a noble fight for freedom. But she wasn't Wu Zetian's sister, and she wasn't a hero. She was a woman who dared to say no to the most powerful men in the world. And in doing so, she became entangled in a political purge that would reshape the Tang Dynasty court. For me, I think she might have just been a princess who was trying to enjoy her life. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed today's topic, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Stay curious, stay magical.